There is a specific kind of person who walks into a room and nobody relaxes. They don't raise their voice. They don't posture. They don't perform confidence the way you've been taught confidence looks. They just stand there, and something in the air shifts. Conversations get a little quieter. Eye contact gets a little harder to hold. People start adjusting themselves without knowing why. You've felt it. You've been in the presence of someone like that, and you couldn't explain what they were doing differently, only that something about them made you want to either earn their approval or leave the room entirely. And here's what most people get wrong. They think that presence is aggression. They think it's dominance. They think it's some alpha body language trick, or a deep voice, or a cold stare. It's none of those things. Those are performances. And performances are readable. What actually makes someone's presence uncomfortable isn't what they're projecting outward. It's what they're refusing to leak. That's the mechanism this video is going to break open. Not charisma, not intimidation. The architecture of a presence so self-contained that it destabilizes everyone around it simply by existing. If you stay, you'll understand exactly why some people command a room without saying a word, and why everything you've tried to build presence has probably been making you easier to ignore. This isn't something you'll hear anywhere else, because the people who actually have this don't talk about it. They don't need to. Let's start with what you've been sold. You've been told that presence is about output, project confidence. Speak with authority. Take up space. Make eye contact. Stand tall. You've consumed content that treats presence like a broadcast signal, as if the goal is to transmit harder than everyone else in the room. And so you've tried it. You've walked into situations trying to project something, trying to seem calm, trying to appear unbothered, trying to look like the most composed person at the table. And what happened? Nothing. Or worse, people read you as trying, which is the fastest way to lose the very thing you were reaching for. The reason that approach fails isn't because the advice is wrong and isolation. Standing tall is fine. Eye contact is fine, but the framework is structurally backwards. It treats presence as something you add, something you perform on top of who you already are. And the moment you're performing, you're leaking intention, you're leaking effort. You're leaking the gap between who you are and who you're trying to appear to be. And every person in that room can feel that gap, even if they can't name it. That gap is what makes people dismiss you, not your posture, not your voice. The gap. Real presence, the kind that makes people uncomfortable, isn't built by adding, it's built by removing. And that distinction changes everything. Here's what's actually happening when someone walks into a room and the temperature drops. They're not doing anything to you. They're doing something to themselves, and you're reacting to the absence of what you expected to find. Let me explain that precisely. In any social environment, there's an unspoken contract. Everyone is supposed to be leaking. Leaking approval seeking. Leaking nervousness. Leaking the desire to be liked. Leaking some signal that says I need something from this interaction. That leakage is what makes people comfortable around you. It's what makes you predictable. It's what makes you safe. When someone walks in and isn't leaking anything, your nervous system doesn't know what to do with them. You can't read their need, so you can't predict their behavior, so you can't relax. That's the discomfort. It's not intimidation. It's unreadability. Think about the last time you were around someone who genuinely unsettled you without being hostile. A boss who didn't smile when you expected them to. A stranger at a gathering who seemed completely comfortable not speaking. A person who held eye contact half a second longer than social protocol dictates. Not aggressively, just without the little flinch of retreat that everyone else performs. What were they doing? Nothing. That's the point. They were refusing to perform the micro behaviors that signal I'm here to make you comfortable. And in that refusal, they became the most powerful person in the room. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this nearly 500 years ago. In The Prince, he wrote that it's much safer to be feared than loved if one of the two has to be lacking. People have bastardized that line into some crude endorsement of cruelty, but Machiavelli was describing something far more precise. He was describing the mechanics of social control through emotional independence. The person who needs to be loved is controllable. Their need is a lever. The person who doesn't need your love, who isn't leaking that hunger, is the one you can't manipulate. And a person you can't manipulate is a person you can't dismiss. You have to account for them. You have to watch them. They take up space in your mind, whether you want them to or not. That's presence, not dominance, not performance. The removal of the lever. Let me make this concrete. Imagine two people at a dinner party. Person A arrives and immediately starts reading the room. They laugh when others laugh. They mirror energy. They compliment the host. They find the group's rhythm and sync to it. They're pleasant. They're likable. And within 20 minutes, they're furniture. Nobody's thinking about them. Nobody's adjusting their behavior because of them. They've been absorbed into the social wallpaper because they offered no resistance, no friction, nothing that required anyone to recalibrate. Person B arrives and does something different. They don't rush to sync. They don't laugh at things they don't find funny. They don't fill silence with filler. They speak when they have something to say, and they're comfortable when they don't. They're not rude. They're not cold. They're just not performing the constant micro signals of I'm trying to fit in here. And what happens? Everyone in the room is aware of them. People start directing comments toward them, testing, trying to get a read. The host checks on them more often. Conversations shift slightly when they're nearby. Person B didn't do anything. They just refused to leak. This is the mechanism at its core. Social environments run on reciprocal leakage. I show you my need, you show me yours, and we both relax because we've established mutual vulnerability. It's an unspoken trade. When one person refuses that trade, they break the contract. And a broken contract creates tension. Not the hostile kind. The kind where everyone becomes slightly more alert, slightly more aware, slightly more careful. That's what presence is. It's a broken social contract that works in your favor. Now here's where it gets deeper, and this is the part most people never reach. The reason you can't fake this is because leakage isn't behavioral, it's structural. It comes from what you actually need. If you walk into a room genuinely needing approval, you will leak approval seeking no matter how still your face is. If you walk in needing to be seen as intelligent, you'll leak that through your word choices, your timing, your subtle steering of conversations toward topics where you shine. If you walk in needing to be liked, you'll leak agreeableness, deference, premature laughter, the soft collapse of your opinions when they meet resistance. The leakage isn't in your body language. It's in your need structure. And people don't read your body. They read your needs. They feel what you want from them before you open your mouth. This is why every surface-level presence hack fails. You can train yourself to hold eye contact, but if behind those eyes there's a screaming need for the other person to think you're impressive, they'll feel it. You can slow your speech, lower your voice, take up physical space, but if underneath all of that architecture there's a trembling hope that it's working, that people are noticing, that you're finally being perceived the way you want to be perceived, then you're not present. You're performing, and performance is the opposite of presence. Performance says, I need you to see me a certain way. Presence says, I've already settled the question of who I am, and your opinion isn't a variable in that equation. So the real question isn't how do I project more? It's what am I still leaking, and why? What do I still need from rooms full of people that I haven't given myself? Because until you answer that, every technique is a costume, and costumes are always eventually seen through. There's a specific test for this, and it's brutal in its simplicity. Think about the last social situation where you felt like you performed well, where you felt like you were on, where you left thinking, that went great, they liked me, I was funny, I was sharp, I was impressive. Now ask yourself one question. If nobody in that room ever thought about you again, if none of them ever mentioned you, never brought you up, never reached out, would you still feel good about how that interaction went? If the answer is no, then what you experienced wasn't presence. It was a successful performance, and the high you felt wasn't self-possession. It was the temporary relief of having your need met. That's not power. That's dependency with a good outcome. And here's the trap. Most people reading this are in one of two places, and both feel like progress but function as avoidance. The first trap is overcompensation. You've heard some version of this message before, maybe from a different source, maybe in a cruder form, and you've translated it into coldness. You've started being deliberately withholding. You don't laugh. You don't engage. You give short answers. You think you're being mysterious, but what you're actually doing is performing disinterest, which is just another form of leakage. It leaks the need to be perceived as above it all. People don't feel presence from you. They feel effort. They feel someone trying very hard to seem like they don't care, which is the loudest possible announcement that you care enormously. The second trap is intellectualization. You understand the concept. You can explain it. You could probably teach it to someone else. But understanding a mechanism and embodying it are different countries separated by an ocean. You've turned insight into a shield. You analyze every interaction after the fact. You see the dynamics. You name the patterns. But in the moment, in real time with real people, you're still leaking. You're still adjusting. You're still monitoring how you're landing. The knowledge hasn't reached your nervous system. It lives in your head, and your head isn't where presence comes from. The narrow path between these two traps is something most people walk past without seeing it. It isn't coldness. It isn't analysis. It's settlement. Settlement is the moment you stop negotiating with the world about who you are. It's not a decision you make once. It's a posture you return to again and again until it becomes your resting state. The person whose presence fills a room hasn't won some internal argument. They've stopped having it. They're not convincing themselves they don't need approval. They've genuinely lost interest in the question. And that loss of interest is what other people feel. It's the thing that can't be faked, because the absence of a need doesn't look like anything. It just is. and everyone around it knows. So here's what you do tonight, not next week, not when you feel ready, tonight. The next social interaction you have, whether it's with a coworker, a friend, a stranger, a cashier, anyone, you're going to run one experiment. You're going to remove one leak. Just one. Pick the one you know is your biggest. Maybe it's the nervous laugh you use to fill silence. Maybe it's the way you immediately agree with people before you've actually considered what they said. Maybe it's the compulsive need to add something clever, to prove you're tracking, to show you belong in the conversation. Whatever it is, you already know what it is. You've known for a long time. You just haven't stopped doing it because stopping feels dangerous. It feels like you'll be exposed. Like the absence of that behavior will leave a hole that people can see through. Here's what actually happens when you remove a leak. Nothing. And that nothing is everything. The silence where your nervous laugh used to be doesn't create awkwardness. It creates weight. The pause where your premature agreement used to be doesn't make you seem slow. It makes you seem considered. The space where your clever addition used to be doesn't make you invisible. It makes everything you do say land harder. You're not subtracting from your presence. You're removing the noise that was drowning it out. One leak. Remove it. Watch what happens. Watch how people's eyes change. Watch how the dynamic shifts. Not because you did something, because you stopped doing something. That's the move. That's always been the move. You don't build presence. You stop dismantling it. The behavior works because presence isn't a skill you acquire. It's what's left when you stop performing. Every leak you carry is a small act of self-betrayal, a moment where you abandon your actual response in favor of a safer one, a more palatable one, a version designed to manage someone else's perception of you. Each one is tiny. Each one is invisible to you in the moment, but they accumulate. And the accumulation is what makes you forgettable. Not because you lack something, because you're burying something. The person you actually are, unmanaged, unperformed, unsoftened, that person already has presence. You've just been covering them with 1,000 small apologies for existing. Here's what I want you to sit with, and I mean actually sit with it, not just hear it and move on. The people whose presence makes you uncomfortable aren't doing something you can't do. They've stopped doing something you won't stop doing. That's the only difference. Not talent, not genetics, not some dark triad personality trait you either have or you don't. They've simply reached a point where the cost of leaking exceeded the cost of being seen, and they chose to be seen, unfiltered, unmanaged, without the buffer of performance between who they are and how they show up. You've been building armor your whole life and calling it personality. You've been managing perceptions and calling it social skill. You've been leaking need into every room you enter and wondering why no one treats you like you're solid. They don't treat you like you're solid because you haven't shown them anything solid. You've shown them a performance. And performances, no matter how polished, are always slightly transparent. People can always feel the person behind the mask reaching for something. And that reaching is what makes you dismissible. Not because you don't deserve what you're reaching for, but because the reaching itself is the thing standing between you and the presence you already have. This was never a video about making people uncomfortable. That's just the visible effect. The thing underneath it, the thing Machiavelli was actually pointing at, the thing that separates people who are watched from people who are wallpaper, is a much simpler and much harder question. Can you stand in a room with nothing between you and the people in it? No performance, no leakage, no negotiation, and be fine with whatever they see? Because the moment you can, you won't need to project anything. You won't need techniques, you won't need to try. You'll just walk in, and the room will adjust to you. That's not a trick. That's what happens when someone stops apologizing for taking up space. And you've been apologizing long enough.